I love to glorify the Lord. So any chance that I get to produce wholesome content that not only I can watch and you can watch, that my daughters can watch, my nieces and my nephews and a family can watch, that's a win-win for me.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cheryl Crisp for Movieguide, and this is Coffee and Conversation with Undefiled. Bradford, you played professional baseball for several years. How did you get from professional baseball to being a professional actor?
That's an interesting question, and it kind of has multiple parts to it. So I'll start out by saying, when I was in high school, there was a local news network there that would cover our sports, and oftentimes they would allow athletes to come on and talk. And so I started doing that. And then that led to me doing some commercials and endorsements for local brands. Fast forward to when I'm in college, I started producing my school news. So at an early age, I kind of was behind the scenes of doing things. And I love the aspect of creating something and producing something and watching it grow and nurture into, this big project. So then fast forward to when I'm playing professional baseball, I have some endorsement contracts. I started doing commercials again. And in the off season, I was in Los Angeles. So I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to know the ins and the outs of what it is to be a professional actor. I just don't want to show up on set and, the crew is like, well, why do they hire this guy? I know he's an athlete, but he knows nothing about our industry. So I wanted to be a true professional. So I started taking commercial acting classes. And I said, well, if I'm going to do commercial acting classes, I might as well do theatrical acting classes as well. And so one thing just led to another. I retired in '09. A friend of mine knew the casting director of this hit television series on USA called Necessary Roughness. I went in, I read again, did the chemistry reads, and the next thing you know, the rest is history from there on.
Wow. So Undefiled is such an important, heart-wrenching movie. Tell us about your character, Mitch Jennings.
Mitch is a very complex guy, a bit of a conundrum, because in his mind, he thinks that he is doing the right thing by providing for his family and hanging on to dear life in minor league baseball in hopes of making it to the big show. Because if he makes it there, then everything that he sacrificed and all the work that he has put into place up until this point is worth it, right? But there's also that part of him that I don't think he forgives himself or feels that he's worthy of it because of the abuse that he took from his father at an early age. Whereas if he hit a home run, if he went 3 for 4 with 5 RBIs, it was never quite good enough for his father. So I think over the course of his life, all that compounded on top of, the pornography that he is at that point addicted to, and he hadn't quite crossed the line yet, but still, I think that when we watch pornography, right, those thoughts, those images are embedded in our subconscious mind. Even though we may not think about it in the present, they're there. And so when you have idle time, then those thoughts can arise. And for him, pornography is a way for him to cope with his stress, which is very dangerous, because if you're that stressed and you're using pornography to cope with that, eventually watching it is not enough. You have to escalate to something else to cope with that stress. And, even though he is somewhat the hero of this film, I think there's a part of him that the reason he becomes the hero is because there's a moment in his time where he gets with Dahlia and he realizes that he's just as bad as his teammates are.
Absolutely. It's such a big problem and it's so addictive. You have starred in so many TV shows and movies, among them Paradise City, War of Worlds, Ted 2, and Stranger Things. Why was it important for you to be in this film?
So for me, I love to do anything that glorifies the Lord. Anytime I get the opportunity to be in a faith-based film or a film that's pushing something positive or something that needs to be brought to the forefront, I try to use my platform and use the ability that God has given me to bring awareness to it. And it's interesting you asked that, because 2 weeks before we started filming here in Georgia, 54 girls were saved from sex traffickers. There were like 13 in Savannah, I think about 24 at Atlanta Hartsfield Jackson Airport, and then there were another, a certain, I can't remember the exact number, but there was another number in Augusta. And I remember thinking to myself, how crazy is this that we're about to start a film about sex trafficking? And here it is, there are 54 girls that's being rescued from that. So for me, yeah, without a doubt, I have two beautiful girls. And if anything happened to those girls, I would move heaven and earth to find them. So for me, bringing awareness to that, whether it be women or, males, young boys, I'm all for it.
Yeah, that's amazing. You have your own production company and you focus on faith-based projects. Why is that close to your heart, Bradford?
I feel like when God gives you a gift, it's not necessarily yours. I'm entrusted with it. And so if I'm entrusted with it, I feel like it's my due diligence to use it to glorify him and bring awareness to his kingdom. So for me, what I like to do is take the faith-based aspect and apply it to, let's say, mainstream television. So for me, I love to shoot a cop drama or a murder mystery and then take that same concept and then add a little bit of faith element to it, whether it be a character that's struggling with whatever the case, his vice may be or her vice may be, and show that through your dedication and your faith in Christ that you can get out of situations and Christ is with you through all situations. So that's one way that I like to do it. And the other way is just like I said, I love to glorify the Lord. So any chance that I get to produce wholesome content that not only I can watch and you can watch, that my daughters can watch, my nieces and my nephews and a family can watch, that's a win-win for me.
Absolutely. Bradford, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I did just do a Christmas film with Danny Roebuck and Kathy Moriarty called Saint Nick of Bethlehem, which is a beautiful story. So that'll be coming out Christmas of this year. Spencer
Okay.
Fulmer was the director out of Los Angeles, and Danny Roebuck was his co-director. And then I have another murder mystery with Stelio Savante, who's a really good friend of mine who was in The Chosen. And actually, Stelio was on that film with me too, St. Nick of Bethlehem. We have a film coming out called Wrong Way Out, and that'll be out fall of this year. Again, murder mystery, very good project. Yeah, so look forward to those two coming out, and there are two more, but those are the main two that I'm really excited about having coming out.
There are some more important things that I need to focus on. I got you.
Undefiled is such an important, thought-provoking film. You are a practicing Christian psychologist of more than 20 years, and your research helped create the movie. You're executive producer. Tell us about the movie.
Oh, wow. The movie Undefiled. There's so much to be able to tell you, but essentially it chronicles the story of a man, our main character, Mitch, who has struggles of his own, some of which include sexual addiction. And in that, he tries to find all kinds of ways to prove that he has value, to be able to prove that he has worth. And in his efforts to try to discover these things, he realizes a dark secret within the baseball team that he tries to end up rescuing some individuals within that. It's a movie that really highlights the story of a man's life and a man's search for meaning.
Why did you feel like it was important to make this movie?
Oh, wow. Statistics show. So one of the things I've already mentioned is that one of the struggles that you will see within the film portrayed is one of sexual addiction and pornography use. So one of the reasons why that even became a theme within the film was based upon some of my clinical practice of over 20 years. And over 90% of men are dealing with some type of sexual addiction that may include pornography. And there's no easy way to start a conversation with that. So we wanted to create a product that would be a great conversation starter for individuals, for families, for organizations, and even for the church.
Talk about the cast. You have a former professional athlete and who starred in Stranger Things, among other things, and an actor who played Moses in The Chosen.
That's right. We had Bradford Haynes and Stelio Savant, and please forgive me if I mispronounced their names. You know, What's great about having these two individuals is that you would not have more fun with any two people on set. Now, granted, this was the first set I had actually been on in terms of film, but Bradford and I'd say we became good friends. We were able to have some pretty good conversations. And Stelio, my goodness, just the impact that he had in being able to just talk about even his own scriptures that he was studying at that time and the impact it was having on his life and how he was able to even play that out in some of the things that we worked on through the film Undefiled.
Many people don't realize how big of a problem and how addictive pornography is. Can you talk about that and how it affects not only the victim, but also the perpetrator, relationships, marriages, and even society?
Absolutely. So that's a fantastic question. So I first started beginning to unpack the story of sexual addiction around 2008. Now, what's unique about 2008 is that was the first year that the smartphone actually was integrated into our society. And what had happened with that integration is that the hallmark characteristics of pornography had now been removed, meaning it was much more accessible than ever before. It was affordable now because it was free and there was like anonymity. You didn't have to be seen using it. You could do it in your own private viewing. So all of those were removed, and I had an individual come see me. This was 2008, and one of the things, if you ever come see me as a psychologist, one of the things I always say is like, you're not going to tell me anything I haven't heard before. This one particular individual was at least 17. I think he was like a junior or a senior in high school, and he was the first person that actually sat down and was bold and brave enough to say, I've got a problem with porn. And that began to change my world because at that point, then I had to start doing my own research because that was the actual first time I had heard of anybody struggling with this. And I began with a book by Patrick Carnes called Out of the Shadows. And from there began to study there were websites that were being created. Dr. Gary Wilson was one of those, of Your Brain on Porn, as well as Fight the New Drug, were some websites that were just coming along. And what began to get highlighted in that is the actual impact of pornography on the brain. And we can talk about the impacts it has on the brain in terms of the dopamine effect, but also it actually changes the reward system within the brain and the things that the brain seeks. So the changes that actually happen within the individual, and within the individual, then they begin to no longer see a human life as value. There becomes a dehumanization to that and an objectification, and it becomes about my personal pleasure as opposed to anything else. And we begin to realize that even within that, there's a lot of increased anxiety in individuals that use or consume pornography. There's an increased amount of depression. There's more loneliness and less satisfaction in marital relationships, and the impact of betrayal within that. All of these things were beginning to be researched and unveiled over the past 15 years or so. But then now we're even beginning to recognize that the sexual addiction pornography has become the fuel to demand sexual exploitation and sex trafficking. And it's been a creative challenge to be able to put that together into a narrative format to create a story like Undefiled, to be able to, again, start some conversations for people to be able to have.
It's really, really important. In the movie, the main character, Mitch Jennings, is struggling with pornography and he finds strength in the Bible. Can faith help battle pornography?
Absolutely. That's another great question. What I would even say and answer is I think faith is the thing that will help one overcome the battle with pornography. So in the years of walking with men, one of the things that began to take place is I was seeing the same story unpack itself on my couch, coming from stories of abuse or abandonment or just boredom, and people discovering pornography at a very early age and then hiding it because shame begins to affect that. So one of the things that I began to develop around 2012 was an actual ministry and a retreat that we would take men on and we would talk about how God has created sex to be pleasurable. It's a part of his created glory. It's a gift that he has given us, and our responsibility is to steward that gift. But many of us in our own broken condition have gone and abused our sexuality. We have misused it in ways, but Jesus does pursue us even in our brokenness, even in our shame, and he's the one that wants to restore us in that. So I believe in the work that I do, faith is the way to be able to overcome this battle.
Pornography is not what God intended for us. Talk about how it leads to other things.
Sure. So one of the things that happens of just let's take that young child. Most kids by the age of 13 have already seen pornography. So when they first get that introduction, it could be a very innocent search, but the things that they begin to discover on that begins to shape areas of the brain, the reward center. There's actually what's known as the sexual arousal template. And before long, that one thing that was once novel is no longer novel. So they need to have something more and more to be able to get the same type of dopamine. And by the time these individuals continue to grow, by the time they get into their 20s and 30s, it begins to have some pretty significant impact on their relationship with others that can even lead to sexual dysfunctions, including erectile dysfunction. But the more disturbing part of that, too, is the impact it begins to have on society, because I think statistics have shown like 1 in 8 of the most popular pornographic films, or 1 out of every 8 searches, will include some form of violence within that. So now not only what we're discovering when we're looking for pornography or we're searching for that is that there's more and more violence that's linked to that. So now we have this confusion that begins to happen with this arousal that takes place, but also this violence. And then we begin to believe that that is what sexuality is, or what it involves. So there's an increase in the exploitation and the violence that begins to take place.
Yeah, we can do better. We need to do better. Sex trafficking is a $150 billion industry. What can be done? And if somebody is struggling with it or knows someone who is, where can they go?
Oh, I'm so glad you bring that part up, because here's the thing that oftentimes is difficult for people to accept is like actually our use of pornography is fueling the sex trafficking industry. Now, I know that that's hard for an individual who's in the middle of their battle with pornography to begin to recognize that they're actually contributing to the violence and the abuse against individuals. So one of the things I would encourage, and that's one of the hopes of the Undefiled film, is like, let's start creating healthy conversations. Let's admit that, hey, I've got to struggle with this and I need help. I need to talk to somebody. Let's no longer keep this in the dark. Let's bring the things from the darkness into the light so we can begin to experience the freedom. And I think it begins at an individual level. And that individual level, once one man begins to overcome and find his freedom in Christ in this, that he will begin to take that to his family, and he'll be able to take that then to a community, and that community then will begin to change our society. And I think one of the other more heinous parts of this too is most people don't believe that sex trafficking happens in the United States, but it is within our community. One of the partners that we had in our resources that we're able to offer is a partnership with the National Center on Sexual Exploitation and Dr. Michael Shively, and he speaks to the impacts that pornography is having on our society, and it's enlightening, to say the least.
That's amazing. Tell us the website or where someone can go to get some help and some of your resources.
Absolutely. So our first, Light of Life Films is where you will be able to discover the movie Undefiled. But then our resources, we've been able to partner with Pure Desire Ministries. They're based out of Troutdale, Oregon. They've been doing this since 2007. They're a fantastic, biblically based, clinically informed group of individuals that have helped us put together resources. And some of the joy of this program has been able to meet with Trevor and Matt and Ashley and Heather as they have helped us create this 8 session video follow-up to the film itself. And within that, there's a workbook. And again, the exciting part about that is there's conversation starters. So livingundefiled.com is a website where you'll be able to go to, you'll be able to look into those resources. And then another exciting partner that we have is actually Boulder Recovery. So Boulder Recovery is a part of the Begin Again Institute. So you'll find them at beginagaininstitute.com. What Boulder Recovery does is they offer Christian intensives, 14 days, where men who are dealing with this, they can actually get away, and it's a very trauma-informed care. I got to meet Matt, who's one of the leaders of Boulder Recovery, and just his approach to how he treats individuals, I love. But the thing that I really like about Boulder Recovery is even during that 14 days of intensive, while your spouse is away, if you're leaving a spouse back at home, is they offer virtual support for the betrayal trauma side of things. So what they're doing is fantastic. I'm excited about people being able to funnel through the Undefiled Filmed, the resources that we've been able to partner with to be able to get the help that they need.
If you enjoy videos that follow your values like ours and you want to help us continue, go to movieguide.org/donate, because we're actually a nonprofit. You may not know that, but we're working in Hollywood every day to help families have more choices that follows their values. And also subscribe right now.